Hello and welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish review. In today's Doctor Who Big Finish review, it's that time again where we don the velvet jacket and we look at the third Doctor Adventures of Volume 6 featuring Poison of the Daleks and Operation Hellfire. The second Big Finish Dalek story for the third Doctor in Poison of the Daleks, and we see the third Doctor go back in time, which is a bit of a rarity because the third Doctor doesn't have many historical stories, so this seems quite an exciting box set. So without further ado, let's look at the presentation for this box set and then we'll go into my thoughts on the stories themselves. So taking a look at the cover art for the third Doctor Adventures Volume 6, we've got the Doctor Who logo there, the nice sort of third Doctor Vortex style background, sort of a jungle background there, two Daleks, the third Doctor, Joe, Churchill and the Amulet of the Wastelands, the third Doctor Adventures, the side of the release and the back of the release there. So if you want to know more about the stories, then do feel free to pause. And the total running time for this box set being 240 minutes. So taking a look at the leaflet now, so we have production credits for this release and the lovely cast photos of the people involved within this actual release itself. And then we have the cast list for the story itself. So the disc art is exactly the same for all four discs. So kicking off this review with Poison of the Daleks. So this is Guy Adams' third Doctor story, which the previous two have been utterly brilliant. They've been excellent. So will this be a hat-trick for Guy Adams? Now Guy Adams to me really does capture the spirit of the Pertwee is, and this story is no exception because it really does capture the family dynamic of the characters to the environmental message, with this story being based around clean air. So on the outside, this story has all the hallmarks of being a brilliant third Doctor story, and in my opinion this is a very solid outing for the unit family. Part 1, so we have a rather tense start to this story with this character called Sanshi trying to evade being exterminated or captured by the Robomen. So we have a nice little wink and nod to the 60s Dalek stories. This story does have a few more of those, and I think what would have made the story feel a bit more in keeping to the actual third Doctor era would to be actually have the Ogrons. I think they would have made a great addition, but the Robomen in the grand scheme of the story don't feature that heavily, so I can see why they were used instead of the Ogrons. So back to the story, we have the Doctrine Joe and Benton in Bessie on their way to this research facility called Breathe Industries about a clean air filtration with it removing toxins from the air. One thing Guy Adams does so well is capturing the characters' relationship. As I said in my review of The Rise of the New Humans, Guy Adams really does capture the Doctor and Joe's dynamic, and this is exactly the same with everyone having a sing-song in Bessie except the Brigadier. When we have a nice few little references in the actual song itself of Draconians, Dravins, and a rendition of the Venusian. So the Brigadier and Benton are here to look at the security side, while the Doctor and Joe are to look at the actual project of Breathe Industries. So is Breathe Industries really the world's solution to solving pollution? The Doctor is very sceptical, with Jane David Hunt leading the project, with her being a politician, and the Doctor definitely doesn't see eye to eye with her. With them having a device, having them have a set route around the actual facility so they can't wander off. So what exactly is Breathe Industries hiding? So while this is all happening, Shanshi is still being chased, which is great as we get to sort of lay down the foundations of the actual story, but while still maintaining some great action moments. The music in particular is a highlight of this story, with it being very ominous and very 70s. So it really does aid the atmosphere. So Shanshi appears in Breathe Industry and is struggling to breathe the Earth's air, causing the Doctor and crew to begin investigating, as the Doctor and crew get transported to the poison planet, leading to the classic reveal of the Dalek. And one thing I like is how the story actually builds up to the reveal of the Daleks, so this is done excellently. Part 2, so we have quite an action-packed start to the story of the Doctor, Joe and the Brigadier and Benton trying to flee the Daleks, which is quite grim actually, as they struggle to breathe the toxic air and collapse and get rescued by the rebels, as we learn that they've not only travelled in space but in time. Now for me this part feels very sort of traditional Terry Nation Dalek stuff, obviously it being in sort of a jungle and us, you know, the Doctor and crew sort of taking medication for the radiation, all that kind of stuff. So very traditional Terry Nation Dalek sort of stories, what you would expect. As the rebels hide in this jungle, what the Daleks cannot detect thanks to this character called Squadge, which leads to a funny dynamic between her and the Doctor, with them creating a device to stop Dalek motive units, and the Brigadier and Benton are trained with fighters. So this is one thing I admire about this story, is that the Brigadier and Benton come along on the adventure and they don't get left behind on Earth, so it's great to see them have more involvement within the actual story. And Joe and the rebel leader, you know, go around and give medical supplies, with Joe having this lovely moment, you know, thanking Red for saving all of them saying that we could have just been like an obstacle for the Robomen to trip over, which is quite grim when you think about it, but they sort of use that they could have just been used as a dead body to trip up a Roboman, which is quite grim in itself. So the Brigadier and Benton and the army of rebels go on a little recce mission to see what's about in the city, only to discover starvation, work camps and death. So seeing the Brigadier and gang get attacked by Varga plants and the Doctor's device not working, which leads to a tremendous cliffhanger. Part 3, so this part absolutely flies by, with the Doctor and squad being captured and taken to the city, and we expand on the city and the society before the Daleks arrive. So we have the Doctor confronting the Supreme Dalek about their plans as we finally learn some of their plan details. But we do have some mystery, why did the Daleks choose this planet and why do they need help with this nexus? So we learn how the Daleks got involved in Breve Industries and what they want with the Earth's air. So the Supreme Dalek gives a chilling message to both Joe and the Brigadier. They decide to begin a rescue mission to save the Doctor, leading to Joe to discover the pet of the Daleks. Part 4, so things are really ramping up as the Dalek invasion of Earth begins, as their plans is fully revealed, with it involving the Earth's air as the Nexus problem is solved. And we do have quite a funny moment of the Doctor doing Venusian Aikido on the Brigadier. So the Doctor's plan is in full action, and the resolution for this story is quite a great little twist, and I'm not going to spoil it because I think that's for you to discover, because it is quite a nice little ending and quite a little wink and nod to some other things what feature within Dalek story. So I'm just going to say that really. And the ending itself between the Doctor and Joe and the Brigadier is pretty funny actually. It's quite a nice funny way to see the Doctor and Brigadier lock horns at the end of the story while Benton and Joe just look on. So moving on to characters now, with the third Doctor played by Tim Treloar. Now he does an excellent job bringing the third Doctor to life, from the wonderful sing-song in Bessie to the defiant authority. Tim Treloar, each box set just keeps refining and just gets better and better. And this story really does capture his tetchy nature in working with Squadge. So we do have sort of the love of his gadgets, with him building a device to disable the Daleks, and him locking horns with the leader of Breve Industries, and him being very sceptical of it. But we do have some really sweet moments between the Doctor and Joe, and how fond he is of Joe. Joe Grant, played by Katie Manning. The lovable Katie Manning does a brilliant job bringing the bubbly Joe to life. This story really does show a much more determined Joe, with her being very determined to make a difference, and I guess this is sort of foreshadowing the Green Death in a way, with us seeing how passionate she is about the environment. So maybe this story could be the catalyst for her to look into sort of Professor Clifford Jones, which is quite a nice little thing to think about really. So, we do have a sort of traditional protectiveness of the third Doctor and sort of a caring nature. The Brigadier, played by John Coleshaw, my goodness, he does a marvellous job, just really captures the intonation of Nicholas Courtney, as this story is full of Brigadier's dry wit, with us learning, the Brigadier sang Tom Jones at the unit Christmas party, and him having that sort of stern authority when leading the rebels, of him having a great speech about rescuing the Doctor from the Daleks. Saying let's get our man back, which I just absolutely love, because these two characters, the Doctor and the Brigadier, don't see eye to eye on every occasion, but you can see that there is a deep fondness what the Brigadier has for the Doctor, so there's a sort of a mutual respect between the two, which I really do like to see within this story. Sergeant Benton, played by John Levine, the ever reliable Sergeant Benton. John Levine does a great job with this story really utilising Benton, with him getting some really great moments with Frazzy, with him boosting morale with his joyful enthusiasm with a few funny lines. Squadge, played by Abigail McKern, a brilliant performance of her having a great rapport with the Doctor, being quite smarmy and quite condescending, leading to some great witty lines between her and the Doctor, and her having a great little backstory within this story. Red, played by Alexandra Riley, a very good performance, with her being this sort of traditional leader character, with her being quite hopeful and optimistic about the future of her planet and her people. So what are my overall thoughts on Poison of the Daleks? Well, this is a thrilling adventure, with it having a strong core message, much like the Pertwee era. If this story was made and produced in the 1970s, I think that this would be incredibly engaging for kids, with them learning about pollution and the effect it has on the environment, and it being told with the Daleks, it definitely would help aid the message across. It's great to see, the Brigadier and Benton be more involved and not being stuck on Earth, and we actually have them a part of the adventure, which really helps sort of solidify and help sort of sell the unit family feel to this story. The Daleks themselves are excellent within the stories. They don't hang about, they're ruthless and will stop at nothing to achieve victory, with them manipulating people because they know that humans fear death. And one thing you don't think about the Daleks is they're quite funny with these sardonic bits of dialogue. I like that, because they're sort of toying with people until they ultimately say exterminate. The music feels very sort of 1970s, really does aid the atmosphere, with it having quite an ominous feel. Still retains that sort of experimental nature of the Pertwee era music. So the story is full of wonderful character moments and a strong message behind it. So I'm going to give Poison of the Daleks a well-deserved 8 out of 10. So moving on to the second story, Operation Hellfire by Jonathan Barnes. Now, Jonathan Barnes for me is one of the most consistent Big Finish writers, with him writing the superb Jago and Lightfoot revival, the chilling Last of the Romanoffs, and the underrated persuasion. So I was incredibly excited to see him tackle the Third Doctor. So did he deliver? Absolutely. This is a magnificent story for the Third Doctor, with it being a spy espionage thriller with a bit of occult thrown in there for good measure. So the Third Doctor is often described as the James Bond Doctor, and well, this story definitely makes the Third Doctor live up to that reputation. Part 1, so we start off with quite a creepy opening with this sort of cult having this sort of possession, so it's a very sort of a Damon's vibe, with the music cues almost sort of replicating the music from the Damons, which I think is quite a nice little homage to that story. We then cut to the Doctor tinkering with the TARDIS and Joe sorting the Doctor's post out, which was quite a beautiful scene between the Doctor and Joe, with them talking about sort of the hypercubes, which I guess is a nice little bit of foreshadowing if you know about the story. And sort of the Doctor talking about saving paper. Again, sort of a very 70s thing about the environment which features within this story. So the Doctor is invited to a book event by a writer called Douglas, who the Doctor has never met, but he seems to know the Doctor. So off the Doctor and Joe go to attend the book event at one of the Doctor's club. So while that happens, we keep cutting to the cult with it having a chilling prophecy. So I really do like how the story sort of tone cuts from the rather wholesome Third Doctor and Joe scene to a rather creepy cult scene. So whilst at the book event, the Doctor sends a present, which turns out to be a time lady. So we have a fun little joke about, you know, where's the chap with the bowler hat? A nice little reference to the start of Terror of the Autons, when the Doctor gets the message that the Master is on Earth. So the Time Lords want the Doctor to go on a mission to retrieve the Amulet of the Wasteland, which is from the dawn of Time Lord society, what has the ability to warp realities, and if the wrong hands can plunge Earth into a dark age. So obviously the Third Doctor doesn't really want to be the Time Lord's errand boy, with the Doctor saying, why can't you just send the Corsair, which is a nice little nod to the Doctor's wife in a way. But time has already sealed why the Doctor and Joe must go, and this all leads to quite an eerie and tense cliffhanger, but the cult's plan that this wizard will arrive and will change the tide of the war, but not the side you would expect to win. Part 2 of the Doctor and Joe, now in 1943. This is when the James Bond sort of espionage tone really comes into play, with us finding out that there's a cult room in the Doctor's club, which provides quite a nice little twist on why is that there. You know, this part again provides some great character interactions between Joe and the Doctor, with Joe being quite horrified by Blitz-torn London whilst on their way to the war rooms, and the Doctor to comforting her. And this is part when Churchill gets involved with the actual story, of the Doctor and Joe being briefed about Operation Hellfire, with us learning about Hal Lippman and why he is so dangerous and how he links to the cult, that he's arriving in England imminently. So this presents a great sense of urgency, with us learning of the amulet's location at Finch Davenport's estate, which features quite an unsettling scene between Finch and a character called Sally. So the Doctor's plan is in action, with him going to pretend to be Hal Lippman, but this is wartime and nobody can be trusted, leading to a great twist. Part 3, so this is when we get some great action moments for the Third Doctor, of him jumping out of a car, leading to quite a funny moment featuring the Time Lady saying, go and get captured again. You know, what you've done isn't part of the mission, which is a good moment for the Third Doctor, because he is very much a character what has great pride. You know, he prides himself in what he does. So it's just a case that he has to swallow his pride and just admit, yeah, you're right, I better go and get captured to get the amulet back, which is quite a nice little moment. So Joe and Douglas are on a rescue mission to go and get the Doctor. So you wonder, what is Daisy planning to do with the Doctor's cape? So we have the Doctor arriving at Finch's estate, with us wondering what secret is Finch hiding, leading to the great confrontation between the Doctor and Finch, as Daisy and Finch's plan is close to realisation, and we get a scarecrow with the Doctor's cape on, which I may be looking way too deep into this, but I think that's quite a nice little reference to Wurzel Gummidge. And also Joe gets to play a very different role, leading to a great sort of twisted and messed up cliffhanger. Part 4, so we have quite an interesting resolution to the cliffhanger, with the cult stuff really coming into play, as you wonder what power is on its way. And we have sort of Daisy's plan revealed, with it definitely utilising the World War II setting, which is quite good to see being used more. We have a great twist involving Hal Lippman, and leading to quite an action-packed showdown between the Doctor and Daisy. So moving on to characters now, with Tim Treloar playing the Doctor, and he does a brilliant job capturing the tones of the Third Doctor. This story really does capturing the, sort of his brash sort of dismissal of sort of the cult stuff, much like he is in the Damons. And with this being a spy thriller, we do get some great action moments with a reference to Houdini, who at this point must have like the most references, must be like the most referenced person in the Doctor Who world. So I do love how sort of Jonathan Barnes has really captured sort of the tetchy side of the Third Doctor, of him just wanting to tinker and fix the TARDIS, and just doesn't want to be the errand boy of the Time Lords, with us having this sort of classic Venusian Aikido and the classic burst of authority when taking control of situations. Jo Grant, played by Katie Manning. Now Katie Manning does a wonderful job, as this story offers something more for Jo, seeing her use her escapology, and the second half of the story seeing her throw herself right into it the situation and going undercover. But we do have some great lovely moments between her and the Doctor, and how brilliant their dynamic is, with us seeing how horrified Joe is and quite unsettled by war-torn London, with a great bit of foreshadowing about Joe leaving. Wing Commander Douglas, played by Mark Elstop. Now, Mark Elstop does a superb job playing an older and younger version of the character, showing the versatile nature of Mark Elstop's performance, making it feel very believable that time has passed. Douglas is very much sort of the traditional sort of stiff upper lip Englishman, quite gun-ho, with him being a war hero and writer. Daisy, played by Jenny Spark, a wonderful performance, bringing this quite unhinged character to life, as this story really does explore her character incredibly well, with her having quite sort of chilling scenes, especially the possession moment, and her being quite cold and direct and just wanting to achieve her plans, and is very self-assured that she will. Finch Davenport, played by Terry Malloy, an excellent performance by Terry Malloy, who is quite an interesting character with quite a dangerous past, as you think that he's quite a caring, thoughtful character, but as the story progresses he just becomes utterly creepy. And there's a scene in part 2 where Terry Malloy just excels, and you think you are just a pretty sick and twisted character, with him being incredibly manipulative. So what are my concluding thoughts on Operation Hellfire? Well, it's an absolute joy to listen to, with it feeling like a story you would see in an annual or TV21. Jonathan Barnes just really captures the time period, and it just works so incredibly well, with this story being quite refreshing in the sense that the Third Doctor doesn't really get many historical, with the Time Warrior and the Carnival of Monsters in the 1920s, even though that's technically inside the miniscope. So I definitely would like to see Big Finish do more historicals of the Third Doctor. The theme of espionage, with it being set in wartime, you really do think, who can the Doctrine Joe trust? Churchill plays quite a minor role within the story despite being on the cover. He's in a handful of scenes in part 2 and 4. Which just provide some good moments between the Doctor, and the inclusion of the Time Lord mission just fits the World War setting incredibly well, and I think it's kind of a wonderful nod to the man himself, John Pertwee, because obviously he did play quite an integral part in World War II with him doing sort of secret missions. So I do feel like this story is a little bit of a love letter to the man himself, with obviously this whole sort of secret mission of it. So Operation Hellfire, I'm going to give it a well-deserved 9 out of 10. So what are my concluding thoughts on the Third Doctor Adventures Volume 6? Well, I absolutely loved it. I think that this is a great set of stories. Poison of the Daleks in particular does really feel like a story you would see produced in the 1970s, with obviously the strong environmental message, and that being told with the Daleks, I could see that being very effective if it was made back in the 1970s. The music in that story is definitely a standout, and I would say for the whole box set actually, the music does have that sort of experimental Pertwee era feel to it, but does have quite an ominous feel, and how the sort of music can replicate sort of the daemons in Operation Hellfire, which is quite a nice little reference, I feel. It's just a fun set of stories. Operation Hellfire is brilliant. It's just great to see a different sort of adventure for the Third Doctor, and I just had a lot of fun with it. I really did enjoy listening to these two stories. So that concludes this review. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time, whatever that will be. So thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.